Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well this evening. Tonight I have a subscriber interview, part 1 and 2, with some very interesting photos that he took while being a truck driver. He actually took a photo at one of the locations where he had to drop off, and there was a Dogman on the roof of the building. Before we get into that, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and the membership are in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's second half, shall we? Preston, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on. And like I said, the floor is yours, my friend. So share away.
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for reaching out to me. For anybody who has had encounters, and then they reach out to YouTubers. Not that you guys are the end all be all, but it means a lot. It really does when you guys reach back to us, because we can share information. If nothing else, sometimes just about men. But I've only got 45 minutes, so I'm going to speed up talking a little bit faster than I normally do, because I've got a lot I want to get out. Let me just start by saying my name is Preston. I'm born and raised in Ohio. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. And that's actually where this whole thing started with me. I went to Ohio State, so I lived in Columbus for a number of years. So I moved back to Cincinnati, and well, let me explain Cincinnati for those who don't know about Cincinnati, give you a picture of it. Cincinnati is a very beautiful city. It's a major population center, but yet and still it's cut straight out of the wilderness. Like, once you leave the main roads of almost any street in Cincinnati, it's nice tree-lined streets, wooded areas, some heavily wooded. Okay, so that's where I grew up. So I moved back to Cincinnati in 1997, back to my old neighborhood. And one thing I noticed right off is that we have a very large deer population in my area, which we never had before. So now around the year 2000, I got custody of my son. So I'm always a teacher. So I was explaining to my son, the reason we're seeing so much deer now in the neighborhood is because construction or whatnot, we've infringed on their habitat. And that's what I went by for some years. But I thought about it, and like we discussed earlier, once we leave anywhere damn near the United States, once you leave the major population centers, it's basically wilderness areas, deserts, plains areas, mountains, whatever. So I thought about it. I'm like, deer would just move deeper out into the woods. So I started thinking, well, might it be that they're more scared of something in the wilderness than they are in the city, so they rather be around us. So that went my quest. It's just brainstorming. It's thinking okay, what's forcing deer into the city? So I guess around 2010 or so, I stumbled on Dogman. So, listening to him, like, okay, Dogman. So I've always been open-minded because of things I've seen. So I kind of got familiar with the Dogman phenomenon, and, I kind of just laid it down a little bit. Then I guess all around 2015 or so, or whatever, I think it could have been later than that, but I heard the Siege of Rocket Ranch, and that kind of really got me back into the phenomenon. But like with most people with Bigfoot, I assumed that Dogmen were a down south phenomenon because, most people assume that Bigfoot are a Pacific Northwest phenomenon. So then I started hearing more experiences. I started hearing about the LBL. I'm like, okay, well that's closer. That's a lot closer. So I was listening to a program and I heard an interview with Jody Cook, North American Dogman Project. So I'm listening to it, and in talking, he mentioned that he was from Cincinnati. So I'm like, okay, that's where I'm from. So I reached out to him, and we struck up conversation. And he tells me, like, Ohio is infested with dogmen. And suddenly he gave me an answer I've been looking for 10 years. Now, this is where a lot of stuff is going to start coming together real fast, Jeff. Like we discussed earlier, a lot of people have seen Dogman or seen cryptids, and you don't really realize it because you don't know what you saw until somebody will bring up something and it was something will just click. So where my mom lives at in Cincinnati, she lives kind of back in a nice little side street, very heavily wooded. So I would notice, I would go over her house, pick up my son would spend the night over her house. And I would go over there, and I would pick him up in the morning. So I get out of my car, and I would walk to her building, and I would just smell the overwhelming smell of wet dog. And I never really thought anything about it. Just, okay, I smell wet dog. And it wasn't until I'm playing things back in my head that something just clicked, like, I shouldn't just smell wet dog in the air. Like dogs don't produce that much of a smell when they're wet. But yet and still, I would notice the smell of wet dog. And then I start replaying other things like, there was a time I came down there to visit my mom. So I got there on a Friday, and I'm looking out her window, and there's like a little small pasture in the back of her yard. So I see a mother goose and 3 chicks. I don't know what you call baby geese, but these 3 chicks. And then down from them, I saw there was a deer grazing with 3 younger deer. So 2 days later, I seen, this is a story in itself. I saw that mother goose leading the 2 baby deer. Her chicks were gone and the mother deer was gone. So that just let me know, like, okay, there's most likely a dog man in that area. Okay, now let me fast forward and get to the meat of the story. I started working a job in 2017. I drove a fuel tanker. So in my training, I started my training in Dayton, Ohio. So, this is a subject that you don't really just bring up with the average person. Like, hey, you want to talk about Dogman? Have you heard about Dogman or Sasquatch? So, that's something I just normally keep to myself. But like I said, I had been having conversations with Jody Cook, so I was familiar with the Germantown area. So knowing that part of my training that I would have to make deliveries to the same park, the Metro Park, where there had been sightings of dogmen. So the guy who was my trainer, he could see I was kind of nervous, so I finally just came out with it, and I told him. So as it turns out, he never heard about dogmen or anything, but he was interested in cryptids. So we're talking, and he was very interested on the subject, so I just told him everything I knew. And one of the things that I mentioned is how misidentification, because people think they're saying something, and I see something else. So one of the things that people see, or they confuse them, is like with big cats. So when I said that, he immediately related a story that another one of the drivers in Dayton told him about 2 or 3 months before I started working. He was driving in the middle of the night on a road called Shady Hollow Lane or Shady Hollow Road, like near Germantown. And he said that he described it as a black cat that was bigger than a Great Dane bounded across the road faster than anything he'd ever seen. So when I had a chance to question the guy, it turns out that he really wasn't sure if it was a black cat or not. It just moved like a cat, but it was just so big it just appears a black blur. So let me fast forward now about 2 weeks from that. Now I'm in training here in Columbus, where my route is going to actually be. So we go to this time. It's in an area about a half hour south of Columbus. I'll name the city, but I won't be exact with the exact location. But it's an area called Circleville, Ohio. So I have to I have to stop at this place twice a week. So this is my first time ever going there, and it's a large stone quarry. So they have a big dredge pond and everything in there. So we go there for the first time in the middle of the night. So this is after a week of me telling this guy talking about Dogman and stuff, right? So we get to this place. It's in the middle of the night. And by the way, Jeff, after this, I'm going to send you pictures. So you will have a visual reference of everything that I'm telling you.
Okay.
So we pull up to this stop. It's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. So we back up our fuel truck to the side. He's on the driver's side, so it's at night, so we both have headlamps. And so as I'm walking to the back of the truck to meet him, so we can turn the pumps on, start and pump the fuel, I can already see like underneath the truck. So as I'm walking to the back of the truck, I already see it. I see a footprint. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. So when I get around to the back of the truck, like me and my trainer, we're facing each other. So I say to him, I'm like, what's that? He's like, what's what? And I point down my hand like, what's that? And it was like the footprint was in between the two of us. And the first thing he did, because, this is he's a, country guy, lives out in the country. So, hunting, fishing and stuff. So the very first thing he did, because the print was facing his direction, the very first thing he did was like turn around to look for more prints. So he didn't see any. So he starts walking behind me and spots another track that was probably spaced about a good 6-7 feet. And then he saw another one about 6-7 feet. So we saw about 4 prints before we equally got kind of shook. So we just filled the tanks. We really didn't say too much else. And then we left. So we were kind of quiet because we were heading back to Columbus. And, I remember his exact words to me was, okay, you have to come here twice a week. Make sure that as soon as you get to work, you go to the refinery, you load your fuel, and you make this the first stop. He's like, do not come here at night. If it's too late, don't come. Now, this is the guy who is training me. And this is money. This isn't just some, I'm delivering fuel. Like this particular stop, they got at least 1,000 gallons per stop. So this wasn't a game. This was money. So I took that in mind. So knowing now, like, okay, there's a Dogman there's a Dogman here, because I actually took a picture of the footprint with one of my gloves sitting next to it, and I'll send you that picture. But so this happened in the first week of February of 2018. So now I'm cut loose. I'm running my route. I'm secure, so I'm doing my job now. Now, what I didn't mention is I have a friend from Cincinnati who had 3 separate encounters of her own, which is a whole nother probably another show in itself. But anyway, so, this is one of the few people who could relate with what I was talking about. So I made sure whether it was her or my son or somebody else, whenever I made that stop, I made sure that I was on the phone with somebody because I was nervous. So this is February. Let's fast forward March. By the first week of April, I'm there making a stop, and I never really felt at ease there. The stereotypical. I felt like I was being watched. Yes, I felt like I was being watched every time I was there. So my normal routine, I'm on the phone and with my friend, and so I get done pumping my fuel, get my hoses all reeled up, and everything squared away. So I'm sitting in the cab of my truck, and I'm looking, and I just happen to glance over at my little handheld computer to get my next stop lined up, and something just catches my eye just because I happen to be looking over to the right. Now, the pictures will explain what I'm about to break down. This place had, I call it a building, but basically it was more, if you can picture, basically what it was a shelter that they had to keep material dry, like, I don't know if it was like stone or some type of asphalt or whatever. But basically what this building was, the side walls were basically three shipping containers high. And then the back wall were two long way shipping containers. So I guess the dimensions would be like 55 by 110 or something like that, with a roof sitting on top. So with three sides with the open side, right? So you can picture. So I'm sitting in my truck and I happen to glance through a couple of like little silos or whatever. I could see through these things, I could see the roof of this building. And what caught my eye, well, let me back up for a second. A couple weeks ago, I was listening to your channel and someone brought up an encounter, and they brought up something about crows, or something to look out for is when crows fly away. Okay?
Yeah.
As I remember now, as my encounter, when I first got to the stop and I was backing up into the place where I was going to, pump my fuel, right where the Dogman was, there's trees behind there. And I saw these crows, something spooked these crows, and they flew away. Didn't think anything about it. So fast forward now, I look on the roof, and the only reason that it got my attention is because it was jet black. And once again, I hate to sound cliche, but when you hear people say that these things are blacker than black, it was blacker than black, and it just stood out to me. So I'm on the phone with my friend. I was just about to say, I was telling her, I'm like, I made it. I'm about to get out of here. So I glanced over, and I remember I said to her, I'm like, oh, that's just great. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, not only do I have to worry about Dogman, but right now I'm looking at the biggest bird I've ever seen in my life sitting on a roof. And Jeff, it's amazing how the mind works. When you see something you've never seen before, your mind tries to associate with something that you know. Now, I'm actively looking for Dogman. Every week I'm there.
Right.
But because it was in a spot that I didn't expect it to be, my mind just, I'm looking right at it, and I'm thinking it's a bird. I didn't have my glasses on, for one thing. That also is another part of it. So she started laughing. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, I'm looking at a bird that's bigger than me. Like, it's sitting on the roof, and this bird is larger than me, because the way it was standing on a roof, it was standing like giving me his profile. So it was like looking thin, and I'm just like cracking jokes, but I'm like, okay, you don't believe me. I'm like, let me let you go. I'm like, I'm about to take a picture, because I'm like, I don't believe this, but on top of everything else, I got giant birds out here. So I get off the phone and I didn't have my glasses on. So when you a lot of times if you take a picture with the phones, you're kind of looking at whatever you're taking a picture of and the phone at the same time. So you're not really looking at either one. You're kind of focusing like in between.
Yep.
So I'm looking kind of like in my phone with one eye and at this thing in the other. So, and this took me about a month to figure out what I'm about to tell you, like what happened. So I snapped a picture and this thing like moved. It ducked, like ducked his head and like kind of, it came back up and I was like, what the? So I snapped another picture. It did it again. Okay. So this, and it kind of like ducked because it was a pitched roof. So it kind of like ducked on the back side of the roof. So when it came up this time, it didn't show me his profile. It was like a full frontal view. So I'm like, what the? Even, with my glasses on, I can see like this thing was different. So I slide my glasses on and it was initially standing there, like I said, looking right at me. And I would say it was about 100 yards. It was probably about 100 yards away. And it initially was just, I could see probably from waist up. And it was no confusing what I was looking at. Like it was it had the body of the and I hate to sound cliche-ish, but when people describing these things, they're get like this, like when people say picture the werewolf from Underworld, like the jacked one. That's what this thing torso looked like. But the only difference in this one was it literally had the head of a wolf, not like a human looking wolf, a wolf, a huge wolf head. So I had my glasses on, and it immediately kind of like it put its arms on the roof. And now, okay, let me try to picture where I was. After I put my glasses on, and I'm kind of making sure when I'm looking at, I gripped the steering wheel and I pulled myself up into the dash area. So I pulled myself up and to the right. So I'm looking up and to the right. And this thing was sitting on the roof, almost in the same posture as I was, but it was looking like its body was looking down and to the right. And, one thing I would like to say I hear a lot of encounters, and I hear a lot of people that have had very bad encounters, up close and personal. And, I feel terrible for those people because my encounter was 100 yards away and it freaked me out, but at never at any point that I feel threatened. I didn't get a threatening vibe. If anything, when me and this thing were looking at each other, it's like we were thinking it's like I was thinking oh, I can't believe what I'm looking at. And it was almost like I can't believe dude can see me. Literally it was looking like it confused can he see me? That's the vibe that I got from it. But it, I never saw any teeth or anything like that. And I said, I saw it. For the time I put my glasses on, that lasted, because I wasn't, it didn't take me long for it to register. Okay, that's a dog, man. From the time I put my glasses on to the time I hit my air brakes and pulled off, it was no more than 6 or 7 seconds. But the entire encounter probably lasted a little over a minute. So, I'm thankful really that out of my minute of seeing it, I only knew what it was for 5 seconds because, I mean, and that alone, like, traumatized me, Jeff, for real. You know, so my heart goes out to those people who have had, like, up close, extended encounters with these things because it's like, I know what I've gone through. I know what I still go through. And my heart just goes out to anyone who's had to go through this. I mean, it really does. So that pretty much is it in terms of my encounter. Now, the bad thing about this is that, like I said, this is job related. So after seeing this thing, it was my job. So it wasn't like a one-time thing. I had to go there twice a week. You know, and I think that was the traumatizing part of it for me, knowing that, like, there was no guesswork. There's any secondhand information. Is it anybody relating a story to me? This is something I've seen with my own eyes. You know what I mean? And I know it's there. And I know it's been there. I've seen a footprint once, and I've actually seen it twice. So I know it's there. But because of my job, I have to go there. You know, I can't, well, if it came down to it, I would have told my bosses, like, hey, there's werewolves down there. You can drop the fuel if you want to. I'm not going there. You know, but, you know, that's what was so, you know, traumatic for me.
You had a sense of dread every week. Every week there was 2 days a week that you just, you know, you were like, shit, do I really have to go here every week, you know, or every other day to drop off fuel?
And to tell you how serious it was, I went there on Tuesdays, like I said, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if for any reason I got a late start in the day, because I worked like second shift anyway. So if there came a time where it was late in the day, they did not get any fuel that day. They would have to wait till Thursday. And like I said, like, this wasn't, they had 3 tanks. They had a 1,000-gallon tank and 2 500-gallon tanks. So topping those off, they usually get about 1,000, 1,200 gallons, you know, every trip. And there was times I did not go. So this lets you know, like this was my career.
Right. How long did it take to top off? Like, how long were you there topping these off?
I would be there anywhere between a half hour and 45 minutes.
So for 45 minutes, I mean, dealing with 2 days a week, you know, Monday you're dreading Tuesday, Wednesday you're dreading Thursday. On top of that, you're there for 30 to 45 minutes, probably looking over your shoulder every time, you know, you hear a twig break going, is it coming back, you know? That's... You know,
and that's where, you know, I and like most people, I did, and I have become, I guess, obsessed. But Jeff, you can't help it though, dude. I'm telling you, you know, people aren't crazy. You know what I mean? And it's like, you have to know as much as you can, right? And the one thing that I took solace in is knowing that I saw it one time, but I know for a fact every time I was there, the thing was watching me. I just didn't know it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the one thing that I've gathered from every encounter is that there is no, oh, I got away from it, or I outran it. No. If you get it, put it like this: if these were just bloodthirsty killers and just they killed everything they came across, there would be no such thing as Dogman encounters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there would be nobody to tell the tale. So that's the one thing that I guess kept me, you know, sane, but barely. You know, I mean, it's one thing not to know, but it's one thing to know. So when I hear about people who, you know, it's on their family property, and you know, but they still have to do it. You still have to live. You know, and if your family farm, that's your money.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So life can't stop. You know, so I mean, I can relate with these people who you got two choices. Like my choice, I either had to go there or quit. With theirs, they either, hey, do your daily chores or you sell the farm.
Yep.
You know, and people, you know, look, and one thing that I want people to understand, you know, I can't speak for anyone else, right? But you can, I mean, I'm not hard to find. There's not too many questions. If you do enough homework, you can find out who I am. But I can't vouch for anybody else. But one thing you can guarantee, that every word that you hear coming out of my lips is not only 100% accurate, but it's no exaggeration. If I tell you this is what happened, this is what happened. If I tell you I said something, this is what I said. If I tell you this is what I saw, this is what I saw. Like Jeff, I've been trying to get in touch with you for over a year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I gained nothing but possible ridicule.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to gain by sharing. You just want to get it out. You know? What do you have to gain? You're not getting $1 million for telling your story, so why make up a story? I agree with you completely.
You know, and if anything, I just want to. It's like a database. The more information you have to add to a database, the more accurate the database is. And I'm just adding. You know, I would just like to add to the database. That's all. You know. Let me see. You know, there's a couple of follow-ups to this. My next door neighbor at the time, right after this happened, you know, I knew he liked to go fishing. So I told him, I'm like, look, you know, whenever you're out in the woods, man, just be aware of your surroundings. Always be aware of your surroundings. I was like, you know, if you hear the woods go quiet or silent, just be extra vigilant and just always watch your six. So he's like, man, you sound like my grandma. So he would always like, man, like from time to time, he would like, man, why did you tell me that? And I just wouldn't say anything. So, you know, we're drinking one day, we're talking, and he goes, he's like, man, he's like, when you told me to watch myself in the woods like that, he's like, man, I keep saying like, man, you sound like my grandma. He's like, we used to go when I was a kid, we'd go spend summers with my grandma, and that's what she used to always say, like, we couldn't even go outside at night. I mean, so I broke down. I'm like, okay, this is what you know. So I told the whole story, showed the pictures and everything to do. So he was like, man, where was this at? So I told him Circleville, Ohio. Like his eyes just got as big as saucers. He's like, dude, that's where my grandma's like from. Like that's where I used to go spend the summers, like in Circleville. Like that's what I'm talking about. Well, you serious? He was like, we wasn't allowed to go out. Like we couldn't go outside at night. He was like, you know, he was like, and I was that one to ask questions. So, you know, he's like, when I was a little kid, I asked my grandma, like, Grandma, why can't we go outside at night? And she said to him, because the Dogman will get you. So he's looking at me like, he's like, they're real? He's like, I thought she was just, you know, bullshitting us, you know, because we was little kids. I'm like, well, apparently not. You know, and which leads to another subject, man, folklore. Like, you know, like your grandparents, like, there's a reason why they tell you, like, why the country, nobody ever goes out after dark. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why. They don't tell city folk that. But this thing really isn't, the further you get away from the cities, I'm starting to realize, too, the less this is really, like, a big secret. Like, they may not call them Dogmen, but they have different names for them. But, you know, I'm starting to see that, you know, country folk, this is, like I said, it's just one more thing that they deal with.
Yeah. Yep. There's the guy that I speak to on a regular basis. He lives down in Virginia, and he's about my age, 43. He talks to some old timers, in their 70s. And he said, he had brought it up to him at one point. And it's something that, the old timers talk about, secretly amongst each other. But it's not, it's not brand new to these guys, and this is like deep Virginia, Woods, Virginia. And, it's not a new subject to them. But folklore is, it's based on fact, it's just like Native American lore, there's always some sort of fact to the fiction. And, I really like the phrase you used. It's a database, because that's exactly what it is. It's just like it's a verbal file cabinet of encounters and information.
And it's I don't and that's one thing which, like I said, I've always been open minded because of things that I've seen. But I may look at the comments. A person may, oh man, you full of whatever, or they see the pictures I send you and like, oh man, that's this and that. The thing about it is I'm not here to convince anybody. I don't have to. I'm here to relate my experiences that I've heard. Now, a person can believe those or they don't. And honestly, if I can digress for a minute, the whole, I'm 52 years old and I'm getting caught up with the whole computer. Well, not computer, but YouTube and social media and all this. And the concept of trolls, I just don't understand. Like, like with my background in broadcasting, there's a philosophy of, there's no such thing as bad publicity. But I can't understand how a person will sit for an hour, okay, listen to an hour's worth of encounters just to shoot it down. Like, do you have anything better to do with your life? I mean, seriously. The concept of trolls, I'm still trying to. I laugh at them. Actually, I think it's very funny, but it just I don't understand the concept of trolls. Like, trolls are like I really think that that's what they do. They just sit and they troll all day. They'll troll you. They'll troll him. That's what they do. Like, and I don't. That concept to me is just I don't get it. But with this, I don't have to. I'm gaining nothing. Right. That's what I really want people to understand. The only thing that I'm gaining right now is a little weight off my chest, actually.
Right on. Yeah. And we've had our fair share of trolls on this channel. And they're not really bad anymore. For some reason, I kind of ignored them. It seemed like when I was talking about them is when they came. And, we've got a good, well, you've been here for a while. So, the comment section, there's a lot of great people. And, there's one out of whatever, how many, comments. So out of 400 comments, you might have 3 that are trolls. And instead of trolling, they probably should just like get a friend, maybe clean their mom's basement of the cobwebs. I'd be sick of sitting in my mom's basement on my laptop and just want to clean the basement a little bit. But, who cares? And I agree with you.
Hey, Jeff, I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't know how much time I got, but I can't believe I forgot this because, this is the point I've been wanting to get across for about a year if I ever got a chance to talk to the public, okay? I hear a lot of encounters, and I hear about people talking about, they were cutting these things down and do-do-do. Look, let me tell you something, okay? To describe my encounter, okay? I saw this thing by accident. Where it was perched on top of a roof, right? And the only way I could describe its vantage point is that if I was a sniper and I wanted to shoot me sitting in my truck without being seen, that would be the perfect, like that would have been the perfect sniper nest to take. If I was a target, it was the perfect strategic vantage point to take me out.
Yeah.
Which shows like above average human intelligence. Like this showed like it wasn't a accident where this thing was. It was in a perfect location for it to see me and me not to see it. And I think that's why it was kind of surprised and was really wondering if I actually saw it, because it kind of overplayed its hand, because had it been about a month later, I probably wouldn't have seen it, because the foliage on the trees hadn't grown in yet. So it didn't have like a true background like it would normally have, because these things could literally just be standing right at the edge of a tree line, and you wouldn't see it, because you would think it was a shadow. That's how skillful they are, in terms of camouflage. But a wild animal cannot process things like that. Like I said, this thing it would take a military mind to position itself where it was positioned.
Right.
And like I said, I saw it purely by accident. So when I hear these stories, about people, now it's one thing if you're out hunting and you come across one, or you're protecting your property, but, for these guys that, like I got a bear at 50 cal, I'm going to go out and take one down. Okay, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Right, good luck with that.
Absolutely. They're an apex predator, They are an apex predator with above natural intelligence. I mean, they're designed for the hunt, whether it be for food or fun. Their skill is their ambush. They're ambush predators. They've got tactical skill. It's insane how skillful they are.
And that's the one thing that I guess gives me goosebumps even when I think of it, just the word that you use. The tactical advantage that this thing put itself in, like I said, if it was a sniper, he could have put one through my right temple. I mean, that's what, he was like at my 2 o'clock position, elevated at about, it was the perfect perch.
Yep.
The perfect, that's where you would set up tactically. That's where you would do it.
Yeah.
So, when people think these are just, like dumb big dogs, okay, you can think that if you want to. You know what I mean? And those are the people that we probably don't hear their account.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because don't get me wrong, like, I'm not, just because I was fortunate, I think part of it has to do with, with me as a person, not to be corny, but, I don't have any hate in my heart. And, even as I've never gone out in the woods with hate in my heart. I don't walk around with hate in my heart. And you got to think about it. Like if your family dog doesn't like negative energy, like, how they always tell you, like, if your dog don't like somebody when they come to the house, watch that MFer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, watch out for that person. Yeah, because they can sense.
It's the same thing. Like, if I have to believe that. Like, if you're going out in the wilderness with a certain vibe, if you're a certain type of person, that energy isn't conducive with nature, and if nothing else, you're going to draw negative attention.
Right on, right. I agree with you. We're coming up on time right now. I did want to ask you a question when we were talking. We're at about a minute and a half. You had mentioned that you had a couple of other encounters. Share. How would you like to come on again and for a part 2 to share the encounters that your friend had? Is that anything that you're interested in?
I would love to, because look, just to give you a little tease. My friends and encounters make mine look like nothing. All
right. Well, we literally have about 30 seconds. Maybe today's Tuesday. How about we'll shoot for Wednesday or Thursday, maybe tomorrow or Thursday, if you're available.
That's fine. That's great.
That sounds great. All right. Is there anything that you'd like to say to everybody before we end the call?
I'd just like to thank you again, Jeff, and just tell everybody, just be safe, be aware of your surroundings always. Wherever you are, just be aware of your surroundings. Whether you live in the city or the country, it doesn't matter.
All right. Thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Have a good one.
All right, guys. That was part 1 of Preston's interview. About 2 days later, I interviewed him again because we both had some free time, and he shared some other very interesting and terrifying experiences out of Ohio. Here is part 2 with Preston. Preston, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, and it's a pleasure to have you back.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back, and like I said, you said off air, and I want to say it. I said it off the record. I want to say it on the record. Man, like I really, 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 really appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm listening to the playback last night of my encounter, and getting a little choked up now. But I actually start crying because I'm, at the point where I'm listening to it, where I'm explaining myself, talking like how I had to still go to this place twice a week. I kind of really forgot, how traumatizing this was for me, man. So till I had to, say it again. And, it was really healthy for me to get that out, because obviously I didn't know I had that anxiety in me still, and just hearing that, like it was somebody else saying it, it just like reminded me, I guess, things I suppressed for the sake of having to do my job. So, man, I just want to thank you, for giving me the outlet to be able to heal myself a little bit.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But yeah, I just want to, in listening to it, I took a couple notes on myself, and I just want to clarify a couple things and reply to a couple of the comments. First of all, there's a guy who made a comment, and I appreciate that, because, like I said, every day I'm alive, I try to learn something new. So, there was a commenter who let me know that baby geese are called goslings. So now if I ever retell the story about my mom and the baby geese, I will say goslings. The goslings were gone. I won't say baby geese. There was a comment. No, I'll wait on that. There was a comment that a person made that when I read it kind of gave me goosebumps, because it's something I never thought about before. But the person who made the comment about maybe get in touch with the former driver or my route or my job possibly knew. Okay. It's funny. When I read that, it just like, I got goosebumps, because it's a well-known fact, like among my customers and my coworkers, right? my job or my route was, they call it the revolving door. Like everyone, my supervisor, it was no secret. Like in the prior year to me taking that route, they went through at least 7 drivers. Like seriously, they couldn't keep anybody on that route. And, I got to wonder, if one, if not all of these drivers, because the job was, it wasn't that physically, strenuous, although I ended up getting injured. But I got to think that possibly one, if not all these drivers, may have saw what I saw and just decided to just quit because either who would believe them or, afraid that the ownership might think they're on drugs or something. I mean, I'm not being funny. It sounds like it, but I never thought about that until it was brought up in the comment section. And I got to say, it's a viable possibility. It's a very possible possibility. Another comment that was, now this was like a common thread that people made that, which is true, and I'm a believer that is when it's not the one that you do see, but it's the one that you don't see. And the only reason I don't think that it was the setup move was because, like I explained, my actual sighting took place, I said April, that's another correction. It was actually like early March. But from the time I had my sighting till we actually ended that route because they weren't paying their bill, that's another story for another day, was actually late September. So I went there twice a week from March to like the end of September. And I'm here to tell you the story. And like I said, like, there's no doubt in my mind that I was being watched, if not all the times I was there. Like, I always got the feeling like it was watching me. I just didn't know where it was now because I busted it on the roof, so it didn't pick the roof anymore. So I'm not saying, like, you guys are wrong, but I just don't think that because they had the entire summer to get me if they wanted to. They had ample opportunity. Now, this person, I remember him, I'm going to call him out by name, this guy, Mike Turner, he made a comment and he kind of, I won't say exposed me, but I'm kind of glad he figured out who I was because it kind of helps give me a little bit, validity a little bit because I'm going to give you a timeline. He made a comment that he actually saw my story and heard my story, written up on the North American Dogman project. And that's me. I'm the anonymous Central Ohio fuel truck driver. Now, if you look at when that was, Jody Cook uploaded that like about a month or two after it happened, like maybe April, May of 2018. Now, at the time, I was still currently employed. I was still going there twice a week. So they were, they were a customer, and this was involving my job. So I wanted to get it out there, but because I didn't want to jeopardize my job or my customers in any way, at the time I was still anonymous. Fast forward now, I'm no longer working. So my anonymity isn't that much of, me being anonymous isn't an issue for me anymore. Plus knowing who I am, or at least my name, helps, adds legitimacy. So, but that's basically it. Now, a couple little things I want to correct yesterday. I used the term footprint, and I shouldn't use that because it actually wasn't a footprint. It was actually like the biggest canine print I've ever seen. It was like 6 inches by 6 inches long by like 5 inches wide or something like that. So, but I kept referring to it as a footprint. I've never seen a werewolf, so I can't speak on those, but I can speak on a canine-footed, upright, walking canine. That's what I did.
Not to cut you off, but
okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna use that picture of that print next to that orange glove. That I'm gonna use that as today's thumbnail for this upload. Okay, so everybody will be able to see how big it truly is.
Okay, and there's something I'm glad you, because as I'm talking, people, I guess, will obviously be looking at this print. Now, there's one thing that I want people to keep in mind with this particular print. It was raining at the time. So there's about at least an inch of standing water in that print. So as you're looking at it, you almost get like a mirror reflection. So if you don't really see how deep this freaking print was imprinted into the ground, because it's half filled with water, but that gives you an idea of actually how deep, because it's like at least a half, like a good half inch of standing water in the print itself. So it's actually bigger and deeper than it actually looks if it didn't have the standing water in it. But so that's one correction. And two, when I explain to people how this thing has a tactical advantage, I really want to paint a clear picture. Okay, when I would be filling the tanks, I would the way these tanks are situated, they're next to each other, but they're inside of these concrete enclosures. So basically, I would be standing on top of these concrete slabs, basically. So as I look straight ahead, there would be a tree line about 200 yards ahead, straight ahead of me. So now if you can think about this like hands of a clock type thing, they had a big spoil pile. Now, that's a construction term, spoil pile to the layman. It's a big mound of dirt. So this mound of dirt was about 30 feet high, because it was like some type of aggregate that they had piled up. So when I would pull in, my vision would only be from, say, 12 o'clock to my left. Because of that dirt pile being so big, you had the dirt pile and then that building. So I couldn't even see the woods to my right, so I never would ever even look in that direction. So part of, that's what I'm saying, the forethought, that there's perfect advantage to see me and me not see it, but it knew I never looked over there. I never looked over there to begin with, because I couldn't see the woods, and that's where I would be focused on, would be the woods. So for it to know that I never even looked over there to begin with, and for it to be in a perfect spot to see me and me not see it, unless I was extremely lucky. Like, I just want to re-emphasize to people, like, the intelligence that is to observe me first, to see my pattern, and then to know, like, okay, if I want to check dude out, this is where I have to be for him not to see me. Like, that's not, that's scary intelligence. So I just want to reiterate to people, like, if you want to see one of these things, please let it be by accident, or just let it be an accident, man. Don't go out looking for something that might be I'm stuttering because I am a stutterer, but I'm just trying to emphasize, man, you do not want to go out looking for these, Jeff. And I'm glad that's one thing that you kind of emphasize too, like, kind of let this stuff be an accident. You don't want to actively go out looking for these things. Okay? So that's pretty much a ball on that. Now I'm going to move on to my main topic, which is my hometown, Cincinnati. Cincinnati is known to the Native Americans as the land of seven hills. And doing my research in Cincinnati, there's actually, like, in the greater Cincinnati area, the history of Cincinnati, there were no indigenous tribes that took the greater Cincinnati as their home, which given like how I described Cincinnati, it would have been prime territory, for anybody to live in, but they didn't. And I think it's because they knew something. Cincinnati, has a couple of hot spots. And, I've come to find out information. And, this is something that I've been really wrestling back and forth, like, what, if I had the opportunity, would I even, let any of this stuff out? Because for the first time in my life, I felt myself with the dilemma that people have when they have information that the public probably should know, but should you let it out because of the chaos or because of the chaos or whatever that it might bring. But, this is important. And, people need to know, and it may answer a lot of questions that people have been having. I'm going to talk about one particular area because it's connected with my friend's encounter. Okay, Cincinnati, it's like one of the oldest, maybe like city parks in the country. It's called Mount Airy Forest. And it's very aptly named Mount Airy Forest because it's 1,500 acres of basically untouched wilderness that hasn't been cut or developed in over 100 years, like right smack dab on the west side of Cincinnati. Okay, so knowing what I know now, I go back and I look at events and things that have taken place like over the past 20 years in Cincinnati, in and around Mount Airy. Now, Mount Airy Forest, like I said, it's a very, very big park, and it's bordered by several different communities. So, and people in Cincinnati will know, like, okay, yeah, now it's starting to make sense. There's been take the past 20 years or so, there's been an increase in all the communities that border Mount Airy Forest of household pets going missing, like pets just going missing. So they were initially blaming it on coyotes, but the thing about it is the coyote population, it's grown a little bit in Miami Forest, not to the extent that the reports of all these missing animals and take place. Not to mention attacks of people that have been blamed on like rogue packs of dogs and coyotes throughout the past 20, 25 years, all in and around the Mount Airy Forest area. So Mount Airy Forest also has a very large deer population. They have water sources, and it's a densely wooded area for the most part. So my friend, when I had initially started telling her like about the whole Dogman phenomenon, this was actually before I had my first encounter. So, we were talking, and she was just interested in, and once again, when you say certain things and you start jogging a person's memory, they'll start to maybe make connections. So she has 3 encounters, and I'm going to tell them not in order, but I'm going to tell them basically is what I consider like least significant to most significant. Now, the first one happened. This would have been, I guess, 2006. Her and her husband were driving. They were going from their home. At the time, they lived in an apartment complex, which I'll get to that later more in detail with her encounter. So the way this main road that they're on goes is it's a long uphill like drag. So they're driving up the hill, and off in a ditch to her side, they see something like walking in the ditch. So this thing is, as she described, it was huge. She's like, it was like she described it as big as a small gorilla. But, she's like, it was walking on all fours, and she's like, it was walking, so they were coming up to her, so they see the backside of it. So her husband really didn't get a good view of it because he's driving. But she said as she's driving by, well, the one thing they both noticed, this thing had like shoulders. So, but she says that she's driving by, it turned and looked at her face, and that's when she could see like this thing had the face of a wolf or a dog, she said. So she got, her and her husband ended up getting into a little argument because he's trying to tell her, like, which I don't blame him, because with most people, everything is Sasquatch. If it's anything, it's going to be Sasquatch, because that's all most people know. So she's like, look, you didn't see it. That thing with that face of a dog, that was the biggest dog I ever seen. So, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward now. Now, her next encounter is actually involving her sister. Now, this happened around Halloween of 2011 in that park I was telling you about, Mount Airy Forest. Every year in Mount Airy Forest, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have what was called the Haunted Woods. It was basically a haunted trail going through Mount Airy. So, as my friend is telling me the story, she gets a call one night from her younger sister. She's frantic, right? So she's literally screaming and yelling on the phone. She's hearing other people screaming, yelling in the background. So she's trying to calm her down to find out, okay, like what's going on. So through her franticness, her sister explains to her that it was her sister, her sister's boyfriend, and another couple. So there are two couples, and they're doing a little double date thing on this haunted trail. So according to them, according to them, a werewolf steps on the trail and lets out like a howl, and it scares them so bad that they run off of the trail into the woods, right? Lost in the woods. So that's the point in which her sister called my friend, right? So her sister is telling her, like, we just saw a werewolf. It growled at us. It chased us off the trail, and we're lost. So she's telling me now, and this is the point where it might be verified. While my friend's sister's on the phone with the other couple, the guy, is actually on the phone with 911. Right? So my friend can hear the other telephone conversation where the person talks to the 911 operator. So apparently, like, my friend says that at one point she hears it howl. She's like, I heard it actually howl over the phone, right? So my sister's like, did you hear it? Did you hear it? So my friend is, logically thinking this is all part of the haunted trail. So she's like, oh, girl, that's a loudspeaker. Like, she's like, no, it's not. You're not here. Like, I'm trying to tell you, like, what this is. Like this, we saw a werewolf. So she goes, so she's hearing this commotion, and she can periodically hear this thing howling in the background. So all these years, she never really doubted what her sister saw, but she seriously thought it was part of the haunted trail. And to this day, her sister always insisted that no, they actually saw like a wolfman, werewolf, whatever you want to call it, Dogman on this trail. So it wasn't until I brought up Dogman that she remembered that, and like, oh my goodness, like she wasn't lying. Like it like I thought it was a man in a suit, and she kept telling me like, no, this was no man in a suit. This was a real monster on the trail. So I got to talking to her, and I'm telling her like, about some of the other things that Dogmen do. Like, and one thing they do is, they've been known to like look in windows and stuff. So when I said that, she gets extremely quiet. She was like, oh my God. She was like, I've got something to tell you. She's like, this is deep. She's like, I'm shaking. She's like, okay. She's like, my son, she's okay. When my son was born in 2007, she goes, a week before my son was, okay, let me back up for a minute. where she lived at, it was a apartment complex that it was off of a street called Westwood Northern Boulevard. People in Cincinnati don't know what it is. And she lived at the near the bottom where Montana and that street connect. But there was an apartment complex on a street off of that boulevard. So she lived in the first building in the complex, and the way this complex was made, her building backed right up right up to the wood line, like literally. And she lived in a basement apartment. Okay, so in a basement apartment, her window, like their windows were ground level. Okay, so let me back up for a minute. This is where it gets deep. It was a diverse community where she lived at in an apartment complex. So her neighbors, there was a large African population in that apartment complex. So it was a kind of a well-known fact that a group of these guys, these African guys, would, without going into any detail, they would make excursions at night into Mount Airy Forest. Okay, so this was like a well-known fact. So one night, her and her husband, my friend and her husband at the time, her ex-husband, they're coming home. Now, I can't make this stuff up, Jeff. Her husband speaks French. He black dude from the hood. He speaks French. Don't ask me how, but he speaks French. So, among a lot of African countries, French is a common dialect.
Right.
So they come home one night, and a group of these African guys are standing outside, like kind of commotion, and they're talking because they normally aren't back that early from going in the woods. So he's listening to their conversation in French, so he joins, and they know him and like him because he speaks French. So they include him in the conversation. So they tell him this story that, okay, they're in the woods and they're on the trail. So let's just call the guy who was in front Mohammed. This is probably a group of about 8 or 9 people. So as Mohammed is coming through the trail or walking along the trail in front, he sees a pair of glowing eyes behind the tree. So he starts, as they're walking, he starts pointing out, like, do you all see those eyes? So nobody sees it, so they're like, man, you're seeing things or whatever. So everybody's walking, but he's like, no, like, you don't see those eyes? Like, look right there by that tree. So nobody sees them. So they're continuing to walk. Now, the guy in the rear of the group, he turns out he didn't think he saw something, but he thinks he sees something behind him cross the trail from right to left. But he thought he saw something else. But the whole time, Mohammed, who's leading the group, is insistent, like, hey, you don't see those eyes right there, right? So the guy in the rear still isn't, he's feeling kind of iffy because he thought he saw something cross the trail. Now he's feeling like they're being trailed, or he doesn't feel easy at this point. So I guess simultaneously I guess the reason why the group didn't see what Mohammed was pointing to was because they weren't looking high enough, because I guess collectively the group at one point followed his finger, and I guess wherever he said the eyes were, they were higher than anybody thought they would have been. So I guess simultaneously, the guy who was in the back of the group, as he was going to look behind him again, to check, he's looking over he's swinging left, like he's looking over to his left side. So he says as he's panning over, I guess, he sees, now, I'm not saying this trying to be, because I'm black, So I'm not trying to be racist, but I'm just trying to give you perspective. You know, like these are African guys. So, like I said yesterday with me, when you don't know what you're seeing, you try to put in perspective with what you see. So according to these guys, the guy who sees the Dogman, I guess 10 feet in front of him off the trail, or to the side of him off the trail, says, he screams and is like, look. What he's like, that's not a bear, that's not a dog, right? So as they're describing to her husband what they saw, he's like, oh, that's oh, you must have saw a Sasquatch, you know? And like, what's that? So he's trying to describe them what a Sasquatch is, and they're like, well, no, this thing had a head of a wolf, a dog, a wolf. You know. So a couple days later, one of the guys comes over to their apartment. So, you know, my friend, she's listening to her husband talk to him, and he goes on the internet, pulls up some images of Sasquatch. And the guy says, he's like, no, that's not it. He's like, it was big like that, but it didn't look like that. It looked like that, but it had head of dog. You know, and he was insistent that this thing had head of a dog. Now, I'm setting it all up now. Now, all this is about two to 3 weeks prior to her encounter. Now, the night of her encounter, this is a week before she had her son. So she was extremely pregnant. So as she explains it, she's like, I was pregnant and miserable. So she was like, it was, you know, I was hot. So she was like, I went, you know, I took a shower, came out of the shower, and she was like, you know, I just air dried. I was naked. I just air dried. And she's like, I sat on my bed, turned on TV. She's like, you know, it's funny when you talk to people and details that they remember. When she told me the story, she's like, she sat down, she started watching Judge Mathis, and I just thought that was a interesting detail to bring up. So she has a window in her bedroom, like this, like straight across from her bathroom. Now, like I explained, they live in a basement apartment, so their windows were like ground level window, and it's dark outside. And she said, like, she just felt like something wasn't being watched, or something wasn't right. So she says she looks over her shoulder, and she said she saw what she described as what looked like two lights, basically, like glowing in the window. So she looked, and what she thought it was okay. Now, if you picture a dark room at night, like, and a window there, and say you have like ambient light from television or something, or ambient light, you're gonna get kind of a reflection in the window. You know, it's gonna give you kind of like a half mirror kind of reflection or whatever. So she goes up to the window and she's looking at these lights, and then she's looking at the bathroom. She's trying to figure out like what sources of light in the bathroom is producing this reflection on the window, because she thought it was a reflection of light. So she's like, I walk up, you know, to the window. She's like, I'm about a foot away from the window, and she's like, I look at the window and I look at the bathroom, and then she's like, I started taking my hand and like waving it, you know, in front of the window, and I'm looking at the she's like, I'm looking back at the bathroom and I'm looking at the window. I'm looking at the bathroom. This isn't funny, Jeff, but because it's really not funny. I just can't help but laugh. Like, even when she was telling me the story, she was laughing about it after the fact. So, and she's telling me she's looking back and forth, and she's like waving her hand, you know, in front of the window, trying to, and she could see the reflection of her hand waving back and forth. and she's trying to like see like what is causing this light. So she's waving her hand and she's looking at the window, and she's like, all this happened like within a matter of like boom, boom, boom seconds. She's looking because these lights, what she thought were lights, were like basically on either side of the window. This wasn't like a huge window. It was like maybe a 2-3 feet wide. I don't know. But she said the lights were at either corner of the window. So she said if she's waving her hand and she's looking at the lights, it finally dawns on her that these aren't lights, that they're eyes. So she like, oh crap, like she realized like, oh shit, these are eyes. So, but the whole time she's still like, kind of like, she's still waving her hand like back and forth. So when she stops waving her hand, that's when she realized like it wasn't, I'm sorry. It's not fun. I can't. When she stopped waving her hand, basically, the Dogman kept waving his hand. Like, it wasn't the reflection of her. That's when she realized it wasn't the reflection of her waving her hand, but it was this thing, like, matching her movements, whatever, like, waving his hand. So when she stopped waving his hand, like, it waved, like, maybe 2 or 3 more waves, and she said, like, it moved his hand away, and she said it smiled. And she said, you know, Preston, like, now that you tell me about a dog man, she was like, the face makes sense, because I just thought it was it was a monster. She's like, it didn't snarl. It smiled, like, from ear, like the Joker. She like, it smiled like from ear to ear, showed me all of his teeth. But she's like, it was clearly, she's like, the only reason I know now that like it was a wolf head, because like there's a security light in the back of the entire, so the whole back of that complex is lit up. So she said that when she, like, all this, she's like, happened in a matter of seconds. So when she stopped waving, she realized, like, when this monster smiled at her, she screamed, and when she backed away from the window, it backed away from the window, and she could see, like, as it backed away, she could see, like, the light behind it, and she could see, like, yeah, this thing had, like she said, wolf or dog ears. So she's like, oh my God, like, you know, so it kind of shook her up. So I didn't ask her anything about it. So, you know, as a follow-up, I talked to her the next day because I wanted to make sure that everything that she told me, you know, it matched up, and, you know, the story didn't change or anything like that. So,
Preston,
you know,
not to cut you off,
I'm sorry,
we got about 9 minutes left of record time, so.
Okay, let me wrap it up by saying this. As a follow-up question, I asked her the next day, like, did she ever see it again? And this would kind of put it in perspective. She's like, Preston, she's like, did I see it again? She's like, I called my husband that night and told me he has to get here. There's a monster here. She's like, I left my apartment that day and went over my mother's crib. She's like, I never went back to that apartment. She's like, my son was born the next week. Like, I was at my mother's house. She goes, you know, I told my husband, I'm not going back there again. So the next day, her husband has to have an uncomfortable conversation with the landlord, telling him that he's going to break the lease. He was honest with him. He told him what happened, right? So surprisingly, the landlord didn't argue with him. He said, he's like, I believe you. He's like, you do? He's like, yeah. He's like, actually, he was like, you're not the only person to say this. He was like, I've been getting complaints from, like, the neighbors, like, on the front side, on the second floor. They've been complaining, saying that something's been looking through their window at night. He's like, but I didn't take them seriously because those windows like 8 feet off the ground. So, you know, when she told me this, she had no knowledge about Dogman. It's not like she sat around and listened to YouTube videos and was well versed on the subject. That's what made it, when I'm listening to it, like so much shit that she said checked so many check marks. Like, I truly believe that these Dogmen followed these guys back to that apartment complex because of what they were doing over in the woods. From that aspect of it, from it looking in her window, from it smiling at her, from it just being just curious about humans, from it looking in windows of the apartments. It checked off every check mark. But what I want to let everybody in Cincinnati know, hey, I don't know what the government knows or what they don't know. This isn't about that. This is about getting information out to people that I know that are in the city that I love and I care about very much. I love Cincinnati, and I love the people in Cincinnati. And I know that there are Dogmen within the city limits of Cincinnati. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but like I said last night, you need to be vigilant. And you don't need to have your guard down just because you live in urban centers. These things are closer than you think, and they're a lot more frequent than you think. That's all I got, Jeff.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very interesting too, because she had no idea that her neighbors above her, or in apartments on the second floor, were seeing this thing either. And like you said, these windows are 8 feet off the ground. This thing was huge. And if you guys didn't listen to last night's upload, go back and listen to it, because Preston describes how Cincinnati's cut out. There's a lot of wilderness around the city, like very small pockets of wilderness for these things to travel. Wow. I mean, I wonder if I'm almost wondering if the guys that were back there kind of, whatever they were doing back there, kind of not summoned them, but kind of brought them in, by making noise or whatever. And they were
okay, Jeff. I'm gonna just cut to the chase. All right, so I'm not gonna be cryptic. I'm gonna just lay it out to Okay. And I'm not judging anybody, but what these guys were back there doing is they were illegally hunting deer. Okay, to feed their families, but they were illegally hunting deer. So with that tidbit of information, it probably makes a little bit more sense why they were following me, why they followed them back to their apartments.
A blood scent, yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's definitely the perfect reason why they would follow. I mean, that's truly amazing. Wow. To be honest with you, this last night when me and you were talking, I didn't hear these encounters before Preston just told them, and that's why I'm kind of lost of words right now, because it's amazing. It's truly amazing. These guys are, that's perfect. Like what we were talking about last night. There's two reasons why they hunt, or why the Dogmen do what they do: for maliciousness or for hunger. And
right.
This one was clearly for hunger, but curiosity. I mean, because they obviously smelled the blood. There's the bloodlust, hunger. And they come out into a rural area. There's a huge building, lights. They can see people inside. So now they're, they want to investigate a little bit. Really,
right.
Really interesting encounters. And
the thing about it, to put in perspective, like I said, Mount Airy Forest, it's in the Cincinnati city. It's in the city. I mean, it's a huge park,
right?
1,500 acres, but it's in the city. Like I mean, it's when I talk about like in the like no, I mean this is in inside the city limits of Cincinnati.
Like Central Park to New York City, kind of.
Exactly. You know, it's not centrally located. It's kind of like on the eastern, or no, on the western side of Cincinnati. But if you look up Mount Airy Forest, you'll see, you know, and now to put icing on the cake about Mount Airy Forest, not only is Mount Airy Forest one of the biggest public parks in the country, but it sits like direct, like you go from Mount Airy Forest into Spring Grove Cemetery, which is one of the largest public cemeteries in the country. So there's another check mark with Dogman and Cemetery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Preston, I really appreciate you coming forth and sharing these encounters with us. Like we said last night, he reached out about a year ago. Things went on in both of our lives, my health, his health, and it didn't dawn on me to who Preston was until I looked back at the pictures, and I was like, oh my God, you know, and I was excited because I had wanted to hear the encounter, your first encounter, and I'm truly glad that you got to share it in your own words. I'm glad that it helped a little bit with whatever, you know, bottling it up. It makes me feel good that, you know, it's helping people, I guess. So, I mean, that's awesome. And that's why I started the channel. I give you guys a platform to share your encounters, how they happened, you know, and I appreciate it, Preston. Thank you very much.
All right. And you know what? I thank you too, Jeff. Like I said, on a quick note, I'll let you go, but like I said, I'm an amateur investigator, so this has sent me down a rabbit hole, and I've been chasing down a couple leads, and you know, I might be in touch with you about a couple more things.
Absolutely, I hope you do. I really do. You're a really nice guy. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope we can stay in contact.
Also, Jeff, we definitely will, brother.
All right. Thanks, and have a great day.
You do the same.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed part 1 and part 2 with Preston. Very interesting conversations. A lot of terrifying experiences shared there out of the great state of Ohio. With that being said, thank you for supporting the channel. Your support is what makes this channel so special and what continues to make it grow and go. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real, and they are out there dangerous. They are very dangerous. They are out there dangerous. Flat out. Not and dangerous, they are just dangerous. I don't care what anyone says. They are not... If they are demonic... There's your answer. If they are wild animals, look at a silverback gorilla. Or look at a moose. Wild animals are dangerous. These creatures are an apex predator. Share a little bit of information with the people that you love and care about, and it will, or hopefully, save one of their lives someday, or if not all. All right, guys. God bless you all, and have a great rest of your day.